shot talk, take one.
Cool. Now you guys.
With the mayor.
Yeah. The queen of Moab.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
you probably don't know this, but when I got elected, and Emily, Oscar's mom, was the mayor, she called me up to congratulate me, and she's like, so what do you want to do when you get sworn in? Because Mayor Dave gave me this stupid key, this cardboard key, and she goes, and nobody was there, and it was just, it was kind of sad. Mm-hmm. She goes, and I don't want that for you. What? And she goes, should I give you a key? She said, but the key's a card now, because it's not really a key to the lock. And I said, Emily, I want a crown.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I went to get sworn in, she was very gracious in introducing me and welcoming me to the city. And my husband was there, and he had a crown in a bag.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and so I gave my speech, and and then I said I wasn't gonna do it because I thought it was a little kind of tacky, but then I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. And I gave that story, and I put on the crown and kind of laughed. And, and then it's in my office. If you go into my office, my crown is sitting on the paper I had to swear to support the Constitution.
Did you have that on the No Kings Day?
I should have. We don't have kings, but we have queens.
Right. Well, that's funny. Well, a couple things you're saying on that. I always find it interesting. Like you talk about key to the city. I've gone into the city building and I'm like, oh, it's like unlocked. Like sometimes, and I just thought that kind of speaks to like kind of town in Moab.
Yes. Yep.
I was kind of like, no one's gonna rob the police station, obviously.
Right.
but it was kind of like, oh, this is public place.
Yeah.
That being said, one of the things I kind of wanted to ask you is like, I mean, as an older woman, you've probably seen a lot of like changes around like sex and gender stuff. Like I mean, I was talking to my mom. She was not allowed in nursing school because she was an unwed mother, and I was like, this is like what? Like this is in my mom's lifetime, and like my grandmother was born before women's suffrage. So I just kind of, I was kind of interested on your takes on some of that.
On how things have changed through the different generations?
Or where things are at now. I mean, you're a political lead. You're the queen of Moab. Yeah. And, right, it's just kind of like,
let me, one of the things you said before we went online here, you said, what was your first political experience? Yeah. And I was living in Salt Lake City at the time. And Salt Lake City at the time, it was pretty Mormon, still is. Mm-hmm. And so those of us that weren't Mormon kind of all knew each other, right? And so we had our own little kind of clique. It wasn't really a clique. We were the people that went to the bars and partied until 2 o'clock in the morning. And the police didn't really even know about, all the things that we had access to back then. So it was a whole different town. But the politics were the same. Actually, the governor was a Democrat. It was Governor Scott Matheson at the time. But the rest of the politics that, it was just like drove me crazy that Ronald Reagan, I think, was just gotten elected as the president, and nobody that I voted for on the national scale was elected, and it got frustrated for me in Utah. And so I decided I can't live here anymore. So I moved to San Francisco.
And how old? You were in your early 20s?
I was in my, I was in my 30s.
Okay.
I was 31 years old when I moved to San Francisco. And so that kind of opened my eyes to a whole new world. Because in Salt Lake City, it was all white people, it was all straight people. The line was, you can tell somebody who goes to the Mormon church because they have horns and a devil's tail, and that's not me,
right,
but that was the demographic in Utah. And so moving to San Francisco changed my life. I saw diversity. I lived in the Castro, which is the gay community in San Francisco. So I saw all kinds of things that I was introduced to a whole different deal. And I lived there for 10 years, and I'm really glad I did, because it changed my whole attitude about all these things that we're seeing now, transgender, the LGBTQ movement, what we're seeing with our Native American population, with all the diversity issues, it kind of blows my mind, to be honest. It feels like, and I don't want to get into the national thing. I mean, we can if you want, but it feels like we're going backwards. I mean, and at that time, every neighborhood in San Francisco was a Russian neighborhood, or the gay neighborhood, or the Italian neighborhood, or the Chinese. There was so much diversity that it just, it's like, it changed my life. I never looked at the world any different after that. I accept everybody.
Yeah, I always wonder about when people talk about diversity, like what about that? Right? Like, it seems that, like, a lot of people say, like you're saying, it's a strength, right? Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah.
And I just kind of am like, why do you think it's a strength?
Well, let me just give you a little history of myself. I'm Italian. Mm-hmm. I'm a second generation Italian. Mm-hmm. We hear Howard at the debate say, I'm a first generation American. I'm a second generation American. Mm-hmm. My opponent has lived here 6 generations or however many in Grand County. Mm-hmm. I'm not. Mm-hmm. My dad was the first born American in his family. My grandparents came over on a boat and went through Ellis Island and were called WAPs. Mm-hmm. WAPs were like the N-word to an Italian. Mm-hmm. That means, I don't know if you know what it means. It means without passport. Uh-huh. And so back then, this was in the early 1900s when my grandparents came over, mm-hmm. they were discriminated against. Uh-huh. They had people, my dad has an article he gave me when he made a scrapbook. And in that scrapbook is an article from when he was living in this small Italian community in northwestern Pennsylvania. When he was a kid, they used to fill tires with fire and roll them down the neighborhoods in hopes that people's houses would burn down. And so it was almost like, the burning of the crosses for the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah. That was what it was for the Italians back then. And so they were extremely discriminated against. And so I kind of grew up with that. I never knew about this stuff until I got older, but I had heard about it, because my grandparents spoke fluent Italian, And so anyway, that to me, seeing what's happening today, just blows my mind that we would not want to accept these different diverse cultures into our community. I can understand the illegal part of it. Everybody should go through that process. Mm-hmm. What I'm seeing happening now is like
you're not grandparents.
I know.
It sounds like they were legal, but they weren't culturally accepted. Is that?
And I don't think they were legal. I think they were called without passport. I mean, they got on a boat and they went to Ellis Island and they had to sign in. I don't know what the process was then. Yeah. I think we were much we were still a small country. Right. We weren't that. I don't know how many people were living here. Not 300 million. Yeah.
Well, I think industrialists like Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie was saying, like, these immigrants provided a huge opportunity for him to make money. And so, part of that anti-immigration sentiment, from what I understand, was the labor movement was very much against.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And I think that echoes today's thing. You see, like, I kind of want to ask you, like, what do you think? I think that, like, the loss of a lot of, like, working class men has to do with that, like, the same kind of principles on that.
I agree, and that was why they didn't like Italians, because the Italians were coming over, tons of them, and taking all the jobs. Yeah. Same exact scenario, and they didn't like it, and all they were trying to do was make a better life. They weren't trying to take anything away from anybody. So seeing that today, it really bothers me. But I understand the sentiment. That you don't have to pay those people as much as you do the white working class.
It's complicated because I feel like the situation has been played, like, both sides are now how to put this, it's kind of like both a corporate class of people have benefited from it. The way I see it is who benefits from illegal labor and who doesn't benefit.
Right.
And, like, working class people, you could say, make an argument, doesn't benefit from it. but the owning class does. So there's this weird class conflict between like, higher on the economic scale, people like want this immigration, and they want it to be illegal because you can exploit your workers.
Exactly.
More.
Exactly.
And then that splits the working class into like, instead of having class solidarity, it's kind of like, well, Paco over there, is the problem.
Right.
So,
and that's how it was for my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
But they eventually became the working class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Over time, it took a while,
Yeah.
but they did become the working class.
And
they were just, it's not like they discriminated too.
oh yeah, dude. Everybody has. I mean, it's America. You always have to have somebody to kick down. I mean, I kind of wanted to go into like, I hear that. I always hear that term being pushed around by politicians, and
What term?
working class.
Oh, okay.
It's because the voting power is there in numbers.
Right.
And I just like, what do you think that definition means to you?
The working class. Well, my dad was the working class. Middle class, kind of lower level middle class that work really hard to get where they are. That's how I look at it. Try to go to college. My dad worked his way through college and raised a family so that he could better himself and improve and get a higher paying job. We moved around a lot. So that, to me, that's working class. I think working class to me is middle class, blue collar workers.
It's funny, when my sister lives in England, in middle class in England means that you're managing assets. I thought it's a completely different idea, and I see with our class stratification that Americans really don't like are kind of class blind,
right?
And they don't think about it, and they don't want to be labeled whatever. And but I see it. It's like what you're saying to me is like you're working for improvement, but you're doing something. What do you think about like asset accumulation and stuff? With does that count into people talk about generational wealth? Where do you feel like that fits into it?
Well, I consider myself working class, and even though my husband's an attorney, we were lucky. We were able to buy a home here like you did years ago, and collect assets. So that's a really good question, because, you might look at us and look at our 401k, 401k and our portfolio. We have a rental, we have a house we live in, we have 2 mountain properties, we have assets.
Yeah.
But I don't look at us as any higher at a different class. I mean, your comment, we don't really want to be put into a class. Maybe I fit into that, because I don't look at myself as anything other than somebody that's working hard to get things done for my community. But I also have assets.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be...
Well, you're older, you've worked,
I've worked, yes, I have, and I've built it up. And that's, I mean, one of the things that we're doing at City Hall is we just put a new program in place where the city's going to match 3%. You put in 3%, the city will match into your 401k. You have
with
to have
city employees.
With city employees.
Yeah.
And I did that when I was in San Francisco, when I was in my early 30s. Thank goodness I did that.
Yeah.
Because now I have, over all this time, I've collected this nice little nest egg. And that was an idea that I suggested for the city because it benefited me. And it's, a small enough amount of money that a younger person that's in their 30s or late 20s who's not thinking about retirement, has a family, just trying to get by. But you know what? 3% is free money. And so it kind of, encourages those folks that are not even thinking about retirement to do it anyway. I mean, that was the purpose. So that they can be where I was and have that asset when they're ready to retire.
Yeah,
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's revealing because, that also is something I often think about. Like we don't have minimum wage controls.
Right.
You know, Utah's a right to work state.
Right.
And I've often thought that the city and county government jobs can provide a competition to the market on that. And so, you know, I had kind of questions about, like, you know, we at our housing task force, we did a survey, and some of the numbers about where people fit in income levels was like kind of eye popping for me in terms of like percentage of area median income on that. And you know, it's just like I kind of wonder, you know, what do you say? Like I just want to, like, what do you think it takes to live in this town, like money wise,
from like an income wise?
Like I kind of want to hear how you think about like people living here. Like I want to be like, how do you see like the class structure of Moab, and especially kind of, well, okay, I'll just let you, class structure of Moab, what it takes to live here. What do you think, and all that?
I'm worried, to be honest with you, about, you know, because I came here from San Francisco. I had a great paying job.
A notorious affordable city.
Well, and when I left that city, I'm like, I can never buy a house here.
Yeah.
And I kind of, you know, I came from a small town in northwestern Pennsylvania. I'm going to live in a big city. That's what I'm going to do. I got to the big city. I'm like, you know, I think I really want to be in a small town. Mm-hmm. But when I moved here, I got a job, you know, because I wasn't going to move here with somebody that I'd only known for a year without having a job.
Right.
You know, and he was a lawyer. He could, you know, I didn't need a job, but it's like, no, that's not how I
You
roll.
wanted to be independent.
I wanted to be independent. But I was able to get a job here part-time and make the same money I was making, you know, the same hourly rate that I was making, you know. And so, and you hear a lot. How many times have you heard throughout this campaign and previous campaigns, people that moved here, they lived in their vans, you know, they came here for the boating and the hiking and you know, we didn't want to work full-time. I didn't want to work full-time. I worked full-time for 30 years, worked my butt off, and was tired already, you know, and it's just like, and so being able to come here and not have to work full-time and to do all the fun things here when you're in your 30s was great. And then, you know, and I was able to do that pretty much my whole career, just I only had to work part-time. And I think a lot of people here, you know, would like to do that. I don't know how many people are.
Yeah.
You know, but
I almost wonder if that kind of golden age is done.
Over.
I mean, I lived off my bike because I lost my housing several times. That happened to me, but you know, it's just like I have this vibe, and I've had several roommates be like, yeah, I'm working 2 jobs now, and like not really having a break. And it's like, well, why are you living here? You know, if it's, you know, I think you get in Moab, a criticism is you get paid and fun, and then, you know, you kind of get tired of that after a while. I think personally our greatest asset in Moab is like these recent college grads that are like, and I've had many roommates that were in this category, like, okay, I'm gonna go to Moab and work at the bike shop, and they got a lot of talent there, but then they can't seem to get a foothold other than just kind of like starvation wage kind of things going on. And I don't know if you can speak to, like, you know, we're talking about class stratification and how you see Moab. You know,
I wonder if those, you know, like I came here in my 30s. I don't know how, you know, it's so funny because I hear everybody say the same thing. We came here 28 years ago. You know, there's that whole class of Moabites that we all came here at the same time. And we got our foot in the door, and we got good jobs, you know, and we got to play, you know, and we had all that time, and it, you know, but I think a lot of other people also went to college. We had we had career opportunities when we got here. There wasn't a lot of jobs 30 years ago. High paying jobs. You know, unless you were, you know, I had an education where, and they were just, I mean, it's kind of a long story, but the hospital was just starting this new program, and because of my background in gerontology, which is the study of aging, I was able to, you know, get this good job.
Okay.
But there's not very many of them.
Yeah.
And I think when you come here,
do you feel like they're like? You weren't working in tourism. And that,
no, I wasn't.
Yeah,
I was in healthcare.
Yeah.
Healthcare, government, and nonprofits. I
Yeah.
mean, that's basically what I did. And that, becoming I worked at the hospital for, I think, 8 years, was on the county commission, county council, and just moved my agenda forward. I didn't work for like 2 years because I really focused on what I wanted to accomplish at the county. But anyway, going back to, I don't know that when 20-year-olds come and do that, if their goal is to come here and play, like I did in my 30s,
Yeah.
or if it's here to try to get a job. I mean, you kind of made that point. It's like, I don't know what, if it would be great. Caitlin Myers is a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
She came here in her 20s, just ended up here someday,
Mm-hmm.
and look at how she's moved up.
Yeah.
But I think she's rare.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's as many people like Caitlin that are at that level that she is, in her career, in her profession, and she's 31 years old.
Yeah.
She's not going to stay here.
Yeah.
And I.
Oh, you don't think so?
Well, she told me that.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to move on at some point.
Yeah.
There's not much more for me. She's not going to stay in. She's 31 years old.
Mm-hmm.
At 31 years old, I was just starting my career too.
Mm-hmm.
And I was lucky. I moved up within my organization.
Yeah.
We don't have that opportunity. She's at the top.
Mm-hmm.
There's really nowhere else for her to go unless she completely changes her career path.
Yeah.
So, I do think that, I think that a lot of these younger folks really, they'd like to stay here, but how many people have we seen not be able to? Or another opportunity comes along.
Such a thing. Like, I think a lot of talent comes in, and if we can retain them, great. I think it's, especially with the city government, you can be, have jobs. I see people going into that, but, in terms of like a lot of the tourism stuff, I kind of explain it's like a summer job that became a job.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, some people are meant for it. Some people are like 30-year-old bike guide or 30 years of experienced bike guide, and great, you found your thing. But
There's how many boating people that died early because they were
right.
drinking whiskey out on the river all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, like Oscar, he's a great example. He's gonna go to college. He's gonna leave town.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he'll come back.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we see people like Oscar and other family leave.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a while, it's like me, I came back to Utah.
Yeah.
I left because it was like, I need to get out of here. I need to, find a new culture. I just need to find something different. I want to get to that big city.
Yeah.
And then I did it. And then I was like, no, you know what? I like Utah.
Yeah. I have
So hopefully these young folks that leave and they get an education and they get an experience at some point, maybe when they were my age, in their 30s, they'll go, you know what? I really want to come back to Utah. I want to come back to Moab. You see that a lot here.
So do you feel like it's so we lack some opportunities?
Yeah.
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 What do you think? I mean, you think it's education?
I do.
Yeah.
And that's why USU is such a great asset.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it was always here, but to make it its own big, beautiful facility, like we did, thankfully, with donations from the Lawson the Janet Q. Lawson Foundation and the Eccles Foundation. I mean, $15 million they did to build that building. I mean, charitable contributions was great, and that's great for our community to have that. And they just keep expanding the things that they offer, so kids can actually get their education here and stay here.
Yeah.
But as you and I both know, the next problem is, where are they going to live once they get that education? They want to have a family.
Yeah.
$500,000. I think a housing market. I mean, I'm going door to door, and I'm seeing a lot of empty houses, and a lot of them with no sale signs.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of straying away a little bit, but that concerns me.
Oh yeah.
A lot, because I feel like we could go back, and the economy. The economy is a big thing right now. People really don't know where our economy is going. The city's stable. We're flat. We feel good about our budget. But it's just like, gosh, what happens we can't sell all these empty houses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're seeing that now, and I wasn't here for the boom and the bust part of Moab when the uranium industry collapsed.
So you think that a lot of these houses we see for sale aren't moving because they're second home? Like, what's your story behind that?
I feel like, I don't know, but my guess is because they're too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And Moab doesn't really have a lot of those amenities that people want to bring their families to. I mean, hearing that the school numbers have dropped is scary to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we can't have families, what's the next generation going to be here?
Mm-hmm.
I've never really, I mean, honestly, it's not something that I really have focused on until I started knocking on doors and started seeing all these houses that were empty, and there was no for sale sign in front of them. So it's like somebody just left, you know, or it's a rental.
You think they're like second? I mean, you know, 1 in 3 houses are second homes in Moab.
No, because there's no furniture in them. They're empty. They're completely empty houses. Yeah. The lawns are not
think they're like investment holdings?
They could be. Yeah. They could be renters, and they left, and so they're trying to find another renter. But we've got like a ton of rentals right now.
Yeah, and it doesn't. It's almost like the price of housing. I've heard it told to me, and I can kind of agree that housing's expensive, but rent is cheap, right? Like if you pay $700,000, like this house is ridiculously valued. Like I bought it when it was cheap, but like I couldn't rent this place out to meet the current cost.
Yeah, I mean, our example, city manager, $200,000. That's how much he makes a year. He can't afford to buy a house.
Yeah,
he's in a rental, beautiful rental downtown, which he loves because he's the city manager. He wants to be within his city. He's paying $3,000 a month for a nice house. If he bought a house that was to his standards, he'd be paying $7,000 a month. Yeah. And so he's like, I'm not buying a house, which bothers me because I want our city manager to stay. I think he's an excellent city manager. Yeah. And if he's not buying a house, says to me, he's not investing in the community. Right. He's not going to stay here. He's got, but he assures me that that's not the case, but, whatever that's going to be. But that's something, that is something that you're correct. Right now, it's cheaper to rent than to buy.
Right. We'll take a pause break. Okay. All right. So we had switch out our card there. So let's continue on with, we're kind of talking about generations in class breakdowns. One of the things I thought was really interesting right before Charlie Kirk got shot was he was on the Tucker Carlson show. And one of the things that he talked about was that capitalism is failing and that we need to step up, wealth distribution is not working for younger Americans, and they are turning towards socialism because our current system isn't working. And I thought that was really interesting. Here you have a leader of a conservative movement being like, this is why there's Trump and Muldowney voters, right? Because these are Hail Mary, these kids are the younger generations are just like, this isn't working for me. Like the status quo is not working. And I kind of look at one of the things I really see that local governments can do, distribution of wealth is we have grown up in this society where it's kind of the idea that that labor is a distribution of wealth. You work, we take money, we give it to you. That's kind of the idea. And that system in Moab is now breaking down because we don't pay the peasants enough to live here, right? So it's the distribution of wealth is failing us on things you can't have a job without being utterly a lot of our job wages are just not livable. So one of the things is what local governments can do about that. And I think they have a couple levers that are extremely important on that. And so I think housing is one of them. Because a local government, the biggest levers we have is local zoning ordinances. And so we could kind of where you kind of what do you think about that class analysis? Where do you you're saying young kids, you feel like it's just lack of opportunities here, but like there is opportunities to have fun, but there's this ratio of fun time versus work time.
Right.
And I think, those ideas may be changing. The standard thing like, I work part-time and live out of get an apartment for $200 a month, slowly turned in, I work part-time and live out of my car, to like, I can't work, I work full-time and live out of my car. I kind of think there's this general arc towards that, because that's where history's kind of moving us. And I just, maybe you disagree, or maybe you have something to add to that. Land policies, all that. I threw a lot at you. I'm sorry.
Right. I know. I was like, okay. Well, in terms of, I totally agree with the land. We need to really be working on our zones and our land use policies, and we are at the city. Mm-hmm. You're on the county, but
I honestly kind of keep my eyes out of the city. Just
you
be
told
honest
me, I know,
with you. I'm just kind of like,
okay. You told me that before.
Yeah.
But our we're right in the process of redoing all of our zoning and land use. We and I mentioned this last night. That's why I asked you if you were there. We don't have a whole lot of time. This is kind of great because I can talk for as long as I want.
That's why I want to have this.
Try not to make the thing like the League of Women Voters and the Chamber thing. Let's say you have 2 minutes.
Right.
You got to make sure you make your point, and there's so many points to make. But anyway, this is a thing that when I first got in office, we were told that our second strategic plan, the first, we used to have a strategic plan every January, the city council and department heads and city manager and myself, and we determine what our big priorities are.
So pause for a second. Usually your strategic plan is yearly, and then you have a general plan that's every 10 years.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha.
The strategic plan is more on capital improvement projects, what we want to get done, how many staff we need to get that done. Those kind of things.
It's an operational thing.
Where the general plan is land use.
Right.
Specific. But one of the second year, I was there for a year, second strategic plan we did, our planning director, Corey Shurtleff, said we need to change our code because what's so frustrating for developers right now, and I'm hearing it a lot during this campaign season, is that we can't, that it's confusing. And a lot of our developers here, and I hope they're not going to listen to this, but aren't as sophisticated as the big developers up north.
Oh yeah, for sure. I absolutely have seen that firsthand because they're like a lot of small time local guys that might not be lawyer. To understand these zoning things, you need to be a combination of an architect and a lawyer. And
and so what we found was that the real professional developers that come in from up north or other areas, they can get through the code like that. Mm-hmm. It's our local, our more local developers. Of course, they're the ones they're our voters. They're the ones that we're hearing from. They hate it because there was a time years ago where it was much easier because you just shook hands and said, okay, there you go. Yeah. Or this is too complicated. I don't want to have to do this. I didn't have to do it before.
I always say everybody's a libertarian at the DMV. Yeah. Right? Once you start seeing that, you're like, oh, you get.
And, even Colin Fryer, he has a big article in the paper. Mm-hmm. He's just complaining about our land use code. It's because Colin was Colin, and he probably could go in and say, I want to do this, and the staff was like, yeah, it's Colin. Let's just, not worry about it. I don't know if that's true.
No, yeah.
But, so we really, so that was 3 years ago. That conversation came up. It's like we need to change our code so that we don't have to walk these developers through all the steps to get things done. Mm-hmm. And the way to do that is modify it to make it easier for them. And so that takes a lot of work. We actually hired a consultant to do that, and then the planning commission then has to vote on everything, and then it comes to the council. So it's a big process to do that. And we hired a consultant. And it was a big firm from somewhere else, and so it almost was like they did the work for us, and it was like boilerplate, and we can't do boilerplate here. We have to modify it to fit our community, and so we took what they had, and now we're modifying what they gave us to get to that point where it will make it easier for developers to understand the land use code and what the process is. But it's not going away. There's still going to be a process. You hear things. I heard this last night. It's like, we've got to go back. It just cracked me up. It's like, we got to go back, and this is the right saying this, to the way that it was before.
Right.
You know, where before it was the left, it's like, we want Moab to be what it was like before. You know, they're talking about going out hiking and biking and, you know, that. The folks that are complaining now are talking about, you're making it too hard for us to get things done. And I think that that's probably true in some cases, you know, but we still have our rules. Our rules are our rules. They're legal. They're our laws.
Right.
Like you said, you might need to be a lawyer to understand them. But I believe that I know we are working to modify those. It's just going to take time, and it might not be fast enough. In the meantime, we have over 800 units permitted, improved, and ready to go.
Right. Well, that's kind of the issue, right? Like at our housing task force, I called it the big beautiful meeting. You know, Corey was saying about how we have so much stuff that's permitted. It's just kind of sitting in this endless spin cycle of like, well, they just want it permitted so it's vested, right? And he kind of was like, that needs to be addressed. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know how I don't know how you do that. You know, because for developers it's the same for home buyers, right?
Yeah.
It's all about the market, inflation, the cost of supplies. You know, when I first started,
well, there are ideas about like starting to be like, well, if you don't develop a piece of land, like I often view it like, okay, if you don't develop a piece of land, that's a cost to the community, and you start paying a tax on that, which I often thought could be like that building permit. Okay, you can extend it 5 times, then it starts to be $100, then it's 200. You know, I don't even know the ins and outs legality of that. So, you know, there was some talk about ideas like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, and I think we do. You know, I don't understand the code probably as much as you and Miles do, but I think that there is like a period of time where if you don't do your development, you lose those vested rights over a certain period of time, and you have to go back and start over. I don't know what that time period is, but
I don't either. Those are like staff questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, like,
but there should be, and I think
Yeah.
there is. You know, and I think I think we always renew it.
Right.
You know, if they come, because you know we don't want to jeopardize a potentially good development. But it is getting kind of frustrating because,
Right.
like I just said, the ones that are moving are the apartments. You know, 300 apartments are coming online here in the next 2 years. It's going to be interesting to see if we can fill those apartments.
Yeah.
But the low income ones are the ones that are moving.
Yeah.
You know, the higher ones, like the guy that's trying to develop down there by the churches on Cane Creek. Jake Satterfield is his name. When I first got elected, he lobbied us for this zone change. And part of we gave it to them. I didn't. It was before me, but the council gave it to him in exchange for active, part of the units. I think we made him do. I can't remember how many % were active employee housing. And he, and that was 4 years ago. And we changed. I think it was the first vote that we made I was concerned about. But we were convinced by the staff and the other council members this is a good thing because we're going to get employee housing. It hasn't done anything. He's never broken ground. He keeps coming back and trying to change it and trying to want more and take away the affordable housing.
The developers are always like they're the friend and the enemy.
Yeah.
Right. They are the answers, and we have to put out the right kind of carrots on them. But it's always a question of like what are they biting on?
Right.
You know, when like we talked about, real estate prices are high, but rents low. So where are we at?
Right.
You know, what is the solution? It's funny. Me and Oscar went to Subway right before we came here, and was like asking a girl behind the counter. She's 19. If you asked the mayor one thing, she was like, "Rent's too damn high." That's just what she said, right? And you know what's?
Can't believe you guys asked that question.
Oh no, yeah,
But at least she knew there was a mayor, right?
Well, yeah, she lives out at the Rock.
Right. Oh wow.
And I thought that was interesting that there's a whole separate community. She comes in to move, but she talks about like her friends and coworkers and like, I think about people. Maybe she wanted to move out. Well, you can't because rent's too damn high. And we get pushback on like I rent out to, a couple rooms. They're $500 a month, and that helps me pay my mortgage. And I feel like that's a screaming deal. But, if I think there's a lot of people in Moab that like, hey, it helps me pay my mortgage and stuff. And I think there is a legitimate concern like that could be taken away from people that are like, just kind of struggling and making by too. So I see that as a delicate balance on, a lot of ways. So
yeah, it is.
yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Especially people that bought their homes at the high end of the market.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it. And maybe that's why, I think the turning point is if we start seeing foreclosures here.
Mm-hmm.
When we start seeing these empty houses that I see get foreclosed on,
yeah,
that's when I think we're going to have to really start thinking about how much trouble we're in.
Yeah.
And where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we can't get families to live here, and we can't get, how are we going to support our economy? That concerns me a lot. A lot. I mean, we could be the last, generation that got to get, we're lucky enough to be able to have access.
Right.
Before there were so many people and could buy our houses at a reasonable cost.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a theory that if things continue, like I've noticed my street is slowly turning into like second homes.
Really?
And it's more and more vacant. Oh, when I first came in here, we have a lot of people that are older that may like have had or inherited a house or they come and visit. I have a couple neighbors that live up in Bountiful and they come down. But there is quite a bit of like second homes going on here, and it's just like I'm like, is Arroyo Crossing the new downtown? And that I think when we start to see, is everybody really going to be living in an affordable housing scheme? This class division.
Right.
Like I've always liked Moab's like a place where it's like, yeah, my neighbor's yard's dumpy, and that guy's a millionaire, and then like, oh, there's a trailer, and then, there's just middle-class house.
Steveville is like a perfect example of that.
It's a Moab task salad.
Yeah, but that was back in the, back in the 50s and 60s,
Right.
that, and that's exactly what it was. Everything we've talked about, Steveville is the perfect example of that. You got the trailers where the workers, you got the middle-class houses, and then you got the high-end houses.
Yeah. And they were, you're walking right by them. I have a friend, he was Iranian that lived here. And he said the funny thing about Moab was it was the most diverse group of white people that you've ever met, because Moabites,
That's so true.
we kind of like sometimes class and stuff. What it comes down to is you identify with your recreational class.
Right.
A lot of people are like, yeah, I'm a climber. I live out of my van, but he's a climber and has a multi-million-dollar house, kind of thing.
Right.
And I think
that's so funny. That's so true, though.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, and I think about what divides us can be a lot of times like recreational things. So where do you feel like, shifts in recreation, in like what have you seen over your time here at Moab? I like to think of it as like the older hippie Edward Abbey class of like, people.
Exactly, that's a great.
Yeah, and I was on the great mountain biking migration. Like that's kind of my era. Was more like, I came when there's a bunch of Gen X people that we like, kind of just rode mountain bikes, and that's.
Yeah, when I came here, I was living in the big city, right?
Uh-huh.
And so for me it was like, I was a big hiker and a skier, backcountry skier and a hiker. Those were my things. I was in Salt Lake City, right? Mm-hmm. Salt Lake City felt like a small town. You could go ski the backcountry, nobody would be there. I would wear blue jeans to go ski.
Yeah, you and Cheney.
Yeah, and so so those were my two activities, and so I did a lot of that in San Francisco, in California. But I hated the crowds because it was always crowded. And, I could find places to go, to beaches and things like that to go to. But, I was always drawn to the mountains as opposed to the beach. I'd like to go to the beach now for the tropics and, just for vacation. But I get bored. It's boring just sitting on the beach watching waves.
Yeah.
And I'm not a surfer or anything like that. I was a windsurfer. I used to windsurf when I lived up in Salt Lake. So when I came here, mountain biking was just getting started, and I started boating. You know, so I added boating to my repertoire of recreation.
Yeah.
And every boater knew each other. You know, we used to have these boating things out on the river every year, and you know, we'd always get permits because it was when all you had to do is call up the BLM and say, "Hey, can we get on the river today?" And they'd say yes.
Right.
Now you can't even do that anymore.
Yeah.
So that's been a huge shift, you know. And as I get older, you know, I can't get on the river, you know, unless I just do the daily. You know,
yeah,
and so we all knew each other. Like
right.
all the boating people knew. You know, we were getting on we did 3 Grand Canyon trips. I mean, you know, there's this huge boating community that got all the permits, and we would boat. I mean, you know, there were times that I would go boating like 6 or 7. I'd do Cataract Canyon and the San Juan River, and then Deso, and then the Grand. You know, we were on the river all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think mountain biking really grew. Climbing wasn't that big of a deal 30 years ago. It was just like Wall Street, you know, now it's everywhere. Canyoneering, that didn't exist. Yeah. You know, where you just canyoneer and go down in a slot canyon, and OHVs weren't
But
here.
there was a Jeep thing.
The Jeep thing.
Yeah. When I moved here.
But that was the big thing, was the Jeep Safari was the big thing.
Yeah.
And that was
because
like
you
the
always
event
have
of
this
the year.
weird thing about hippies and rednecks both like going outside. Right. If you're a redneck, you drive a Jeep. If you're hippie, you go in a boat or hike. Right. So like, I've heard wild stories about like, man, I forget her last name. Katie. She was BLM recreation director. Stevens was like, when I first got here, her first memory was going up Mill Creek, and a Jeeper was draining their oil into Mill Creek, and you could drive up to the waterfall. And she was like, things have changed, you know, things have definitely changed, especially on the motorized side of things. You know, she was like, they're way more, you know, respectful of the environment and responsible recreationalists.
They are. You used to be able to drive right up to Moonflower waterfalls.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was coming down here recreating when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
You know, and kind of going back.
So how do you see those groups have changed as you've been here? And by the way, all the young kids, you know, they're all like the newest thing I've seen is the base jumpers. There's probably something. Oscar,
and the
what's the newest thing now? What's the Gen Z, Gen Alpha thing?
Staying inside.
Yeah. Okay.
On their phones, their phones playing games.
Putting your Instagram photos.
You know what's different to me is the gear.
Oh, okay.
Everybody has to have all the gear.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I used to ski in my blue jeans. Yeah. Right. You know, I mean, we did stuff that was stupid. I never had an avalanche peep. Right. And I'd be at avalanche country. I never even thought about it. Never even crossed my mind. Yeah. You know, so it's like, and then everybody has.
Could it be you're just from Pennsylvania? Because when I went up to the mountains, I was snowshoeing, and people were like, that was really dangerous. I was like, really? I had no clue.
We were immortal. We just didn't even think about that, you know. But it's like all the clothes, you know, which is maybe that's part of the deal. I mean, in order to do all this stuff, you have to have the gear to do it. So those generations of people have to spend more money just to do the activities. Yeah. You know, my boat. My friends built our frame. It was, you know, all we had to do is get some pipe, you know, and they built it and they put it on.
Oh,
no
kidding. Made out of pipe.
Yeah, it's made out of, I don't know. Like,
gas pipe or something.
I don't know what the pipe. It's a great frame. It's solid. You know, it's really heavy. You know, but our friends built it for us. Our boat. We bought our boat from Canyon Voyages after they did a Johnny Walker whiskey run down in Cataract Canyon. They bought 5 air boats, and then when they were done, they gave them to Canyon Voyages and said, "Here, sell them."
Right.
We bought a boat for $2,000, built the frame ourselves. Yeah. You know, bought a couple of boxes, a cooler, and bada bing, we have a boat. Right. You know, nowadays you got to, you know, I mean, you're talking $10,000. We probably spent $3 million. Yeah. You know, and had the best boat around, except that everybody thought our boat looked like shit because they painted it. It was a white air. Right. So the bottom was white, but the tubes were painted gray because they wanted it was like the silver bullet. It was like a Johnny Walker. It was a new whiskey that Johnny Walker was putting out, and it was called the Silver Bullet. So they painted all the wraps silver, and then the paint started coming off of it, so our boat looked like crap. Every time we would go put in the river, the ranger would go, "You're really taking that thing down the river?" And we're like, "Hey, this is an awesome boat."
That's funny.
Anyway.
Well, you know, one of the things you were saying was about like levels of tourism and crowding and whatnot. And I feel like there's this push and pull thing here in Moab about, you know, how much tourism is too much. Numbers are down. I still can't make a left-hand turn on Main Street. You know, I can't get a boating permit. I feel like there's this aspect of capitalism where it's like infinite growth, and you're like like, oh, there's a spot in the bumps in the log on a hiking trail to Arches. We had a cancellation for a hiker today. Let's, put you in there. And I feel like this is a complaint like a lot of citizens of Moab have. And then there's this kind of like business class of Moab that's like, well, my hotel rate's like 50% and it needs to be 60. And it's kind of like, a lot of people are like, well, yeah, you built too many hotels.
Right.
And that's your fault. And our life keeps getting degraded in quality. And I just want to know, like, kind of your thoughts on, like, because it's tricky. I mean, we have to have businesses. But I also think on businesses, we have a lot of, like, low-wage businesses. And how much do we owe them for our degradation of our quality of life, right? Like, you pay a crappy wage. Like, you've now crowded our places that I used to be able to go. Like, how much do I owe you, right? That's why I feel like there is a conflict with the citizens in the business community, right? Between those two aspects. Like, and then I think, again, I'm throwing a lot at you because I kind of want your thoughts on that, but I also wanted to see like how people are, like what you kind of feel about like that balance between business and the people here. I told you my kind of stand, I guess, your response to that and whatnot.
It's hard for me to answer that question because I'm not integrated into the business community.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Taylor would have a great answer to that because he talks to everybody and he's right there. There's definitely a disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of our businesses are tourism related,
Mm-hmm.
but we have a lot of them that aren't. The hospital,
Mm-hmm.
USU.
Yeah.
All the services surrounding that, the care center, long-term
Mm-hmm.
care facility, the government, so we do have a lot of other, I think we could really call them supportive of the tourist economy. Probably the school does not as much, but it does because a lot of the educational programs are around recreation and resource management and things like that. So in terms of the relationship between just Joe Blow citizen, you, me, and
Mm-hmm.
our local businesses, that I think, I'm going to probably get in trouble for this, but I feel like there's a lot of that we as a government entities have this, from the business community, have a higher expectation to make sure those tourist business succeed as opposed to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's not.
It's based on a trickle-down theory.
Yeah.
Right? But the
Yeah.
trickling down ain't trickling that much. That's what I would say. Like, I kind of say to a lot of the tourism businesses, like, okay, I quit my crappy job with you because you failed. You're a failed business. There's another crappy job lined up. Like, I don't know if I necessarily owe the tourist economy. I used to work in tourism. I don't anymore. And so I have a little different perspective on it. And that's where I get into, like, the city has policies to address, like, the wage slavery problems of Moab, Utah, right? Like, I just think, I kind of want to hear how you can help. Like, what do you think the city's role is into, like, helping people with, like, low wages in Moab?
I don't know that it is the city's role.
Oh.
I think that our role is to make sure that the community has the services that they need.
Mm-hmm.
That you have water and sewer when you poop. When you flush your toilet, you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Those kind of, and I think that's our role. And what we can do and what we have done is, if you're struggling, we have programs to help people.
Uh-huh.
You don't have to be older. You can
Right.
be younger to help with heat.
Uh-huh.
To help with your water and sewer. To help. You could be a rental. I mean, when we did the property tax, we vowed to make sure that we were going to have a system. It's really almost like socialism,
Uh-huh.
where we help pay for water and sewer rates for people that the property tax actually hurt.
Yeah.
Who are really struggling, and that includes renters. It's not just homeowners.
Uh-huh.
So I think we can do those kind of things to help support people that are struggling or aren't making the living wage that they need to make. I know at one time in the past there was conversation about instilling a minimum wage number. I think at the time it was like $15 an hour. We actually didn't have to do that because the market created it. You have to pay $20 an hour,
right.
or you're not going to get an employee.
Right. Let's take a break there and do our card. We were talking about supportive efforts.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that what I'm hearing from you think that the city should take these ways around, like you're saying, like they can support their citizens by like almost cash assistance, right? That's kind of your thing on that. I just kind of like also think that like with me and Miles, we're trying. There's a lot of opportunity in this town for new business on here. In my take on Utah is it's Utah. We're not gonna have minimum wage. If you want a cool idea though, like when the McDonald's sign put up their $20 an hour, I feel like that was the unspoken, like that probably improved wages in this town more than anything else.
I agree with you. Because I saw that and it's like, okay,
yeah.
because then all of a sudden, see, I work with the care center,
yeah,
with the health care special service district, and when that happened,
yeah.
that sign went up. It was like we had to raise all the wages of our CNAs, our nursing assistants, because, which I'm glad about,
right?
Because I always thought that those folks in nursing homes that they needed to be paid more money.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my business, right? And we always
right.
paid them like $7 an hour, and they did the hardest work. Anyway, we're kind of going off topic.
No. I mean, that's definitely like we need to support ourselves off this like low wage labor if we're gonna make
right.
everything. So it's like, how do you support low wage labor? And I personally think, I just think that entrepreneurship is like the Utah answer to a lot of things, and you're just gonna have people that aren't gonna be entrepreneurial. It may be a sign that says "Welcome to Moab." $35 an hour is the livable minimum wage here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think the livable minimum wage to like support you, your partner, and 2 kids? What do you think it would take?
$100,000.
$100K a year salary.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
If you want to buy a house, if you want to pay a mortgage, you have 2 kids, you got to send them to school, you got to buy them clothes.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's realistic.
Which ends up being, I think, like around 52,000 hours a year. So what's that? $50 an hour.
I mean, like at Aurora Crossing, I
Yeah.
was really surprised to find out those new cottages that we just did the ribbon cutting for. The AMI that qualifies you made $90,000 a year.
Yeah.
For a 2-bedroom apartment you're gonna pay $1,750 for, which is cheap
Mm-hmm.
for $90,000 a year if
Yeah.
you're making that much money, and those apartments are too small for a family.
You know what's crazy
And
too?
I
I think
don't
there's
know.
this idea that it's like, oh, it's because we're in a tourist town. It's not that much different in other places.
Right, I agree
Right?
with that. I agree with that.
Like I go over
Yeah.
to Grand Junction, I was like, man, rent's about the same. Like I mean, I think there's more
Salt
job.
Lake City, the same thing.
Exactly,
Mhm.
and that's why I'm like, this is a national problem, and what can local governments do? And so, I definitely believe, like you're talking about, like straight up, like a wealth. We talk about wealth distribution. I think wages is one.
Mm-hmm.
Government, how government uses its money. So I guess where else would you like? Where do you see like young people? Like, what would you say to like me and Miles that are like, oh, we're in our first year of business, and like how's this? How do you just see that as it fits in the city ecosystem?
The city government ecosystem?
Yeah,
or
just like how we relate. Like, I mean, we have to me and Miles have to interact with the government, right? We have to file permits.
Yeah.
And I think there's this thing where it's like, does the government help you or hinder you? kind
Oh
of
yeah,
thing.
that's that was a question last night.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and and I believe that we can do better at City Hall in that regard to help our businesses move along, and get their permits and get their licenses quicker. I also think we've come a long way, because of technology, where you're able to get the permits that you need online. You can fill them out online. I also, I hear varying things, but I'm at City Hall a lot, and I see how our staff interacts with people professionally. They're there all the time. They take Friday off because Friday afternoons we're only open till 12 because
But the doors are still open, which I think's great.
yeah, because we got I'm usually there on Friday afternoons because I can get more done. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement in that regard when it comes to business licensings and permits. But I think we've done a fairly good job to try to keep up with the technology and making it easier for people and help talking people through it. I asked my husband because he needs to get a business license, and he works out of his house, and I'm like, was it hard? And he goes, no, not now, because I just renew it every year, and they can send me a note, and I get the thing. He goes, but it was a process to get it, and to have work at home and that whole thing.
Yeah, Miles has told me that there's just, and we see it at the county too, just an explosion in home occupation businesses.
Really? Well, that's good, I think.
It's good, but it also is a story about lack of commercial space. And I want to address that in zoning when we redo the county land use code. I think we just need to get so creative with combination of commercial, like we need to have like commercial residential zones, where it's like, hey, your neighbor might be like banging on sheet metal, but you're able to like have your cabinetry business right next to them, kind of thing. So anyways,
well, no, I think one of the ideas that I have, because I think one of the areas that we're going to see home occupancy expand is AI and technology. And and some people may not want to work out of their homes. It's just, and so there's like a business downtown right now. It's where the Old Times Independent building, where there's like going to be 3, I think, or 5 different businesses in this one location.
Oh, it's Rebecca McAllister's thing. Yeah.
And I think that's a really creative way to help pay off, for somebody, to have a business, they share the costs. She owns, I don't even know what her plan is, but I think we should see more and more of that as our, downtown becomes more expensive for rents and things like that. That's a creative idea. When I ran the first time, I even brought that up. It's like business incubators. People in the
Rebecca with Moab Made and stuff has created markets.
I know.
She creates a market for people to sell their stuff at. I mean, I think we awarded her a rural county grant for that just because, she's proven to be such a multiplier effect.
And I just think that's fantastic. And I would like to, that I think it's a good example of what other businesses can do in our downtown, and but home occupancy is a different animal. So it's a way that people can work in an environment, be out of their homes. I personally worked out of my home. My husband worked out of his home. I love, we like each other. So that was fine. But some people might not want to do that. Some people might want to get out. But
do you have any like specific like plans or stuff, or are these just kind of ideas?
They're just ideas.
Yeah. Because it's almost like when you're going for an election, you can kind of hear. It's a good way to take the pulse on everything. Like between this election and last election, what are you hearing differently? Like walking around and doing stuff.
Oh, the main thing I'm hearing. Well, I won't tell you one of the things that I'm hearing, because it's not positive towards my opponent. But I am hearing, and the biggest thing that I'm hearing, you got to remember, I ran in 21.
Yep. I remember you came to my door.
Yeah.
And we talked about COVID stuff.
I remember that.
Yeah.
So COVID was still in play.
Yep.
And all I heard from almost everybody I talked to, I hate it here. We're overrun.
USU has done studies. This is the least happy municipality
I know.
in Utah. It's horrible.
Which is surprising. It's almost like the Alaska effect, right? People come to Moab to feel like they can escape and be out in the backcountry, and they're really not happy people.
Well, there's people that come here and move, and then there's locals.
Right.
And you're not a local until you're unhappy. That's what I think.
Well, so I'm not a local
I mean,
yet, apparently, and
I
I've been on the county council and the mayor, and I'm still not considered a local.
Man, I think this town, like, everybody's from somewhere. I mean, there, it's. I think that thing about, like, it's a pissing. I love the public comments. It's always like, how long have you lived here? I don't care.
Right.
Right? Like, you live here now. We all live. Like,
Right.
This is America. Everybody's from somewhere else, usually. You know, it's odd that a rural town has so many people from different places.
Let me tell you, though, the difference this time than last time.
Touching the table.
Oh,
Yeah.
everything that I heard was unhappy.
Yep.
And it was from people that are not your unhappy complainers that we hear about all the
Right,
time.
right, yeah.
These were just like my next door neighbor who's been my neighbor forever. She's like, I hate it here. We're overrun. We're getting overrun. We've got these ATVs just zooming around everywhere. They don't care. It's like they've created this playground, and we don't count anymore. Well, what I'm hearing now, and I like to take some credit for that.
Okay, you're taking credit. Okay,
because of my leadership at the city, and what we've done to strengthen City Hall and the things that we've put in place with the ATVs. Emily Niehaus, my predecessor, did a lot of work with the noise situation and educating the people about how, don't drive through our neighborhoods. Keep our neighborhood, and our local ATV outfitters have done the same thing. Yeah. So this time around, I'm not hearing that. I'm not hearing.
You're not hearing like the noise issues.
I'm not hearing. I don't like it here anymore. I'm hearing Moab's doing pretty good. I mean, I'm hearing that 9 times out of 10 out of all the doors. I mean, I've knocked on tons of doors, and the people that I end up talking to, I don't talk to everybody, right? Yeah. Majority of the people, 9 times out of 10, are like, yeah, I think the city's doing fine. I don't have anything to complain about. Every once in a while I'll get somebody that's already talked to my opponent and has the same talking points, about how it's horrible and we're not fiscally responsible and the whole schlick that we're getting.
I mean, we're coming out of COVID too. It's kind of like, everything. Everything. I mean, I remember when COVID first happened. Like I remember telling Chris Baird, all the service economy workers are like, I'm going to live out of my car on public lands. That was the plan until those stimulus checks coming out. And it was like, we're going to have an absolute apocalypse of like homelessness. But it didn't happen. I'm always disappointed that the collapse of society didn't just like happen the way I thought it would.
It will though, Aaron. Trust me. And this is my line. I say this all the time. We're human beings. Humans are too smart for their own good. Yeah. We're going to extinct her. Yeah, I think you and I talked about this. But anyway, I feel very good about how people are seeing the city. I'm also seeing going door to door. You see things that kind of make your heart sink a little bit. You see rundown homes, rundown yards, tons of cars in the yard. I've come across more non-English speaking than I did 4 years ago. But the biggest thing I've heard is the city seems to be doing well. Yeah. We don't hear much about the city. We hear awful lot about the county. And I'm like, and that kind of leads me to, we've done a really good job under my, it's like a whole spiel.
And I think sometimes like messy periods of disorganization lead to organization, and things are a mess in the county, and hopefully
they'll come back.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind.
And one thing I thought was interesting, you had mentioned to me when we had a previous meeting, CERTA money, and one thing we'll talk about this later. I didn't realize what a good deal that CERTA stuff is. As Moab's service plumber, I have met so many people that were like, they were using Rotary Park for several months before they could afford to pay us to put in a sewer line. That's the reality some people are facing here. And that CERTA was like, oh yeah, if you're like not making so much % of area income, we can like pay for like house things. And they're like, we don't get why Grand County isn't using this money. And I was like, oh.
And they said that.
Yeah.
They've said that to us.
Yeah, and I would just put, like, with the city, it's like, man, connecting, what can government kind of do for you, in terms of like that? Like, I'm just like, yeah, man, that would be, I don't want to be like, call the local Soviet and have them figure it out. But it kind of needs to be, like, a government needs to be, how do they support people, on things of that, and it's about advertisement and marketing. I mean, in some outreach, I think that's called. Another thing I kind of wanted to ask you is, like, we were just talking about how these debates and whatnot, it's hard to explain complicated situations in a minute with a 30-second rebuttal. Is there something that you feel like you need some time to explain while you're on camera here?
That from last night?
No. I'm just talking about in general. Like, here's an issue that's not like, like I'm pro. I want to abolish the income tax, and that's not a 30-second soundbite. That's like a policy decision. That's like that's even a bad. I'm just trying to think of like, I want to like reform public land use and reference to like units of grazing. Just something that you feel like you would like to get out there. You have the chance. That's like, oh yeah, this takes a couple minutes to explain, 5 minutes to explain. I'm just kind of giving that out there.
Well, honestly, those two League of Women Voters in the chamber, they covered just about freaking everything. But the kitchen sink was in there. But
were you able to respond in a way you
No.
felt? Okay.
The one thing that I would want to talk more about that I didn't get to talk about
Okay.
is our aging population.
Oh, okay. Because we'll put a book note because I thought it was going to be something else, and because I wasn't detailed.
I want to know what you thought it was, though.
I thought it was King Creek
No.
Okay.
Cane Creek Boulevard or Cane Creek Development?
Boulevard.
Oh.
I just hear a lot of your opponent, the people that like one of the arguments against you is King Creek cost $11 million.
Cost 10.
$10 million exactly, and I just wanted you to put, because I think $10 million, and it's hard to defend that in 30 seconds, So, we've talked about this before. I see King Creek, and I think people don't understand where, like, real estate, there's a nexus between infrastructure and real estate. And that, to me, when I hear King Creek, that was cost, I'm like, yeah, you spent too much money on a light post. Okay, whatever. But, like, I want you to explain to me why that was worth it. Because that's one of the things I hear with people. They're like, oh, yeah, they just blew money on that. So
the funny thing is my opponent got us the money. I mean,
Yeah,
it was his, but we didn't blow money. It was a $10 million project.
Mhm.
We got almost $4 million free.
Mm-hmm.
So it was $10 million that we only had to pay $6 million
Mhm.
for, and most of the work was under the ground. Most of the money spent on
Yeah,
that project was
and that's what
under
I
the
want
ground.
you to kind of explain for us, like, what's that underground work mean for that whole area?
That means we can develop.
Mhm.
That means we can have more affordable housing over there. The one development that I was talking to you about by the churches and by the UDOT yard that hasn't happened yet. It's all set up now.
Mhm.
We don't have to dig up the street to put the sewer line in.
Well, there wasn't a sewer line in a lot of it. Those apartments over there, every 2 years, they would spend about $100,000 to pay me to pull out these sewer pumps, and that was one of the big things. They couldn't build more affordable housing because there's no sewer line, and so I think that keep going on with explaining to what the underground stuff is.
New sewer,
Mm-hmm.
new water, new gas line, hookups for new development down there by the low-income housing where the big lawn is. There's 56 units going in there next year.
Yep.
So that's set up for that, and so I know everybody's like, we spent $2 million on plants. Well, you can either look at we spent $2 million on plants, or we spent...
Was it really $2 million on plants?
No.
Yeah, it was like, wait, hold on a second.
It wasn't really $2 million,
yeah.
because, I mean, there's a lot of plants, and I get that. We kind of went a little, there's too many plants, but if we keep them alive, how beautiful. I mean, for me, it's like what we did on Cane Creek, I want to do on every street in town, because that kind of asset is what makes people want to come here and work and live. It just makes people proud of their town. Not to mention it's the gateway to the backcountry, so a lot of people are, from downtown are going to take Cane Creek, and it slowed traffic down, because it was just people. I mean, I would drive down that road if somebody's driving slow. I'd pass them.
Mhm.
I'd go 40 miles an hour and pass the car.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, thank goodness I never got pulled
It's
over.
setting up that area, because one of the things I didn't think I realized till I get in planning and zoning, that whole area, I know I've dealt with all the bad sewers on there. Like my Mike Delkoff, who owns the who owns the boat shop.
Yep.
There, you can't develop more than half of your property if you have a septic system, and so but that's industrial, and people don't realize we need industrial zones. In my case in point, go get your air conditioner fixed in your house. You got to call an HVAC company. And HVAC has to be in light commercial. That's one of the biggest hangups of getting that kind of business in Moab,
Right.
is having a light commercial zoning. We
Right.
just don't have it.
I thought we did up there.
Oh, we do. There's not enough of it. That's
Right.
what I'm
Okay.
saying. It's like,
Right.
people always complain to me as a plumber. It's like, oh my God, I just can't, we just can't get services. And it's like, we don't have the places to put these businesses. They're getting shoved into home occupations. But my neighbors aren't going to want me banging on sheet metal, right? So that's what I see. Like, you made a lot of business property owners a lot of money by upgrading that, but at the same time, you're also setting it up to be like a productive, like way more productive zone of stuff we need.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, I mean, so that's Cane Creek in a nutshell, right there. I mean, I think it's beautiful. And I know that's people are complaining about it because it's being fed to them to complain about it. Most of the people that I talk to think it's in this neighborhood and around town think it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
They think it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
They are compared to what it was before. We finally get a new road.
Mm-hmm.
Then look what we did at 100 East.
Yeah.
You don't see all the plants on 100 East.
Yeah.
We don't need all the plants on one. We purposely did it that way, and it's our low-income neighborhood.
Yeah, for sure.
And so to me, that's pretty cool too. It's like just because you're our low-income people, you deserve something beautiful too.
Huh. Yeah. And it's funny. I mean, I'm starting to get government brain rot because I just view it as a pure planning and zoning thing now. I was like, oh yeah, we need that zoning spot. That'll enhance development. And I'm not a developer, but I see the importance of it. And so let's go back to the other thing where you were saying you don't have time to speak about old people issues, senior issues.
It's true.
Is that on PC, old people? What's the proper term?
I don't
What
even
are the
know
old
anymore.
people? What do the kids call them? The old people?
We need to ask Oscar.
Boomers.
We're the boomers.
Yeah.
We're the elderly.
Yeah.
We're senior population. And I think about that all the time. It's just like,
Nobody says boomer anymore.
No one says.
What do they call old people? Like
old people.
Over.
Yeah.
I just call them old people. Seniors is when I'm being nice.
Yeah. And I have always, this is gonna kind of be long.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're here for.
But I moved to Utah away from my Italian grandparents that came over from Italy. She had 7 kids and tons of grandchildren, and I was one of the few that left the East and came out West. And she used to call me up and she'd say, I wish you were still here so you could take care of me. And make me feel guilty. That's a real good, Italians do that all the time.
Right.
I do that all the time to my husband. So I got in the aging business. I started working in a nursing home in Salt Lake City, and I was the aide, and it was a small nursing home, and I used to tell these old people, I'm like, the amount of money that you're spending to stay here, you should like save that money and go on a beach and lie under a palm tree and just wither, I wouldn't say that, but I'm like, and just end out your days there on the under a tree instead of in this crappy place,
Right.
And so it opened my eyes to a different side that is forgotten and people don't think about. And we're all going to be there unless we die suddenly of something. We're all going to be. Oscar, you are going to get old and get gray hair someday.
As a millennial, I will die on lunch break. So that's,
Anyway, and so that got me into that industry. And then I got a job I worked at the hospital, the university hospital, and then I got a job in San Francisco with this alternative to nursing home care, up and coming alternative to nursing home care. So you could stay at home when you qualified and you didn't need to go live at the care center. And so I got my master's degree in gerontology. I studied health education at the U, and I specialized in gerontology. And then when I was in San Francisco, I got my gerontology. I'm a gerontologist. Gerontologist is the study of aging.
Yeah.
And so I learned all about aging. You know, I really wanted to get into research, you know, but I never did. And I have to be honest with you. Now that I am an aging person, you know, I'm a senior, so to speak. I have failed of myself as a gerontologist because I'm looking at a shorter period of time ahead of me than I am behind me. And so it's like, how do you think like that? I mean, how do you think like that? You know, I mean, you don't. Oscar doesn't think like that. You probably don't even think like that yet.
Well, I did realize the other day, I'm like, oh, double my age is past the average life expectancy.
I know. You know, when you get there, you know, you just really start thinking about that a little bit more.
I mean, my mom's, you know, almost 80, you know, and she's, you know, she worked in a hospital, and so she has an awful morbid sense of humor.
Yeah.
You know, that's always like, you know, reminded me how close she is to death. So, what you're saying, you know, one thing surprised me when I quit the bike shop and went into service plumbing was I thought when I worked at the bike shop and was dumb and naive to the world that everybody was about a Gen Xer or elder millennial that rode mountain bikes. And then I was like, oh, this town is full of aging old miners, you know? And I can't believe like we have this older generation that has seen a wildly different Moab.
Yep.
And they're just quietly in their houses. You don't see them out much. They've got their whole social structures. So.
And that's going to be us.
Yeah.
We're going to be them. You know, I mean, and I when I came here, those people were me. Yeah. You know, now. And so I just have a passion to make sure that generation is listened to. Yeah. You know, that they're the wise people of this community. You know, we remember what it was like. I mean, all this conversation, we're talking about what it was like when I came here. Yeah. It's different now. It's going to be different in 10 years. Yeah. And so, but I want, because I'm a healthcare professional, to make sure we're taken care of. That we can stay here, that the services are here to help provide for us to be able to stay here. And I did that. You know, the Moab Area Partnership for Seniors, the MAPS project, the new hospital, the new care center, the Grand Center. That was my project. You
know, just put on pause here for a second. You know, the funny thing in my perspective, the best thing you did was advocate for a better wage for your CNAs. Because I'm like, well, you have to have young people take care of old people.
You do.
And, you know, it's like, that's a functional society. And I always thought it's kind of funny that, you know, you have these high costs of hospital stuff, and the lowest paid people is the one taking care of it.
I know.
It's so messed up.
It is.
It's like when you get the $5,000 ambulance bill, and they paid the EMS guy in pats on the back.
Right.
You know, and you know, it's just kind of in all the buildings, and that's great, but I really just think about that intersection of like functional societies and how they have to be mixed, and I just feel that. Yeah. Anyways, I kind of cut you off on that.
No, that's okay. Yeah. But I appreciate you saying that, because that's true. I'll advocate for that, my whole life. And that whole project down there, it wasn't just me. Yeah. It was my idea.
Right.
You know, I got elected. It's like, what do I do? I don't have it. What am I supposed to do? I didn't get a book that said this is your role. It's just, and one of my colleagues said, pick an agenda and just move it forward. Just keep it moved forward. And my agenda was to make sure that people, when they got to a point where they couldn't take care of themselves, they didn't have to leave.
Yep.
Because that's what we were seeing. So many people going to Grand Junction, Price, Salt Lake, whatever. And so that's where I came up with this Moab Area Partnership for Senior. We hired a consultant, and I hired a consultant out of Portland, Oregon, because Oregon was way more innovative than Utah. Mm-hmm. Utah was just status quo. We take care of our own. We don't need nursing homes. But if we do, that's what we're going to have. They weren't creative in that regard. And so I came up with this idea, with this help from a consultant and a bunch of community members. And look what we've got. Yeah. And last night...
Oh, so that's a great spot to reset Oh,
or
okay.
do you want to?
No, you can go. This is your conversation.
So we just spoke all about the Moab Area Partnership for Seniors project that a lot of people don't know about because it was started 20 years ago and we're in the final completion. A lot of the younger folks, the Gen Zers, the millennials, probably don't even know that was a project that I worked on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very proud of that project. It was very successful. We've got one more piece. But last night, before the debates, we were at Dewey's. They had a little gathering there. Colin Fryer. So, and you all saw the article in the paper that he, the big one-page ad.
Uh-huh.
And I went up to him, because this is just the kind of person that I am, and I had a glass of wine, he had a beer, and I toasted him, and I said, Colin, I just want you to know that when this is all over, you and I have been friends for a really long time, and when this is all over, you're still going to be my friend. and he goes, that's right, and he was really nice. And I said, and I also want to tell you, because I've been having this conversation about you and the Moab Area Partnerships for Seniors, because and I always wondered what his thoughts were. And I said, because you sold that land to the Healthcare Special Service District for $1.3 million, 28 acres of land.
Uh-huh.
I said, so that project is something that you were a part of, that you made happen, and I just want you to know that I'll always remember that.
Uh-huh.
Because that was huge. Look what we've got. We've got a brand new hospital, and I gave him this kudos, because that's just the kind of person I am, even though he's slamming me. I don't care.
Oh, he was? He never mentioned you by name in the paper.
Mayor Langianese.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He called me Mayor. He never said
yeah,
Joette.
yeah.
He said Mayor Langianese.
Oh, no. I guess he did mention
Yeah,
it.
he
thought
was
it
like, whatever.
Okay.
I couldn't read it. It was like too freaking long, and it's like, who reads this?
Colin, you hurt Joette's feelings on that. No, local politics can get like, know the people.
Well,
and it's like kind of like.
Yeah, it didn't hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
I didn't give a crap. It's just like, whatever he says, fine. Whatever he says, fine. He's still my friend.
Right, okay.
And he still did good for this community, and I was a part of that good, and he did it not for me, but for my idea.
Okay, yeah.
And so I guess that's just what I wanted to say, that he was a big part of that. And, granted, he's, doesn't want me to win because whatever reasons he doesn't want me to win, that's he has that right to do that. But, this project that we've been talking about for the last few minutes, he helped make happen.
Yeah.
And I'll always think that was a great thing that he did, because, and my question to him is like, now that it's 20 years later and look at how things are valued. I mean, 2 acres is now or 2 acres of land now is 1.5 million.
Yeah.
That was 28 acres.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, it's so good that we had that vision 20 years ago. And he said, yeah, that was a really smart thing we did 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm really proud of that, and there was a lot of people that made that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes back to, we don't talk about our aging population that much.
Mm-hmm.
We're all gonna get there.
Yeah.
And
they vote.
And they vote.
They vote because they got nothing else to do. Just kidding.
That was bad. but that's true. I'm gonna get that way. I still have a lot of travel in me.
Well, I think it's the only agency you have is voting, because, you're not, I think about things in terms of organizational capacity, right? Like a government, a city is an organizational capacity.
Yeah.
And
it's more like a business than the county.
Yeah.
We run more like a business.
Yeah.
And that was something that I thought about saying last night, because one of the questions is the mayoral role. And, and I've thought about this a lot. And this is absolutely 100% true in my opinion. The role of the mayor, Moab City's like a business. Uh-huh. We're more like a business because we have a city council and a mayor. We're the board of directors. The mayor's the chairman of the board. And the city manager's the CEO. Yeah. It makes it, and then everybody else is appointed by me. Mm-hmm. All the, like the treasurer, the recorder, and the chief used to be, not anymore. Uh-huh. And so, we are like a business, we operate like a business because we provide service. Mm. The county is totally government, and the whole conversation about we need to consolidate services, we need the city and the county to work together. We do, but it should be the city in charge, not the county, because the city knows how to run a business. We know how to provide those services, And the way that that's going to happen is through annexation. And so it will happen. It won't be in our lifetime, but eventually the city will probably annex all the way down the county line.
Mhm.
You know, and then
For
you'll
sure.
have your one government in the county. All they'll be doing is managing what
Thompson.
happens outside.
Yeah.
Thompson and
Yeah.
Castle Valley. Well, Castle Valley has, but
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
Yeah.
seriously. And so I don't have a problem with consolidation of services, but to think that it's going to happen like that
Yeah.
is totally unrealistic.
Yeah, you know, one of the funny things is the talk about if any liberal a Democrat consolidated service, it would be seen as some kind of anti-police thing on there as well. That's some comments that I've heard, and so it was like only a Republican could do that because it's seen as such a memes of Moab. Well, leave memes of Moab. Whoever that is, it's probably Oscar. We will find out.
I know this is the best kept secret. Can you believe it? Emily Campbell knows.
Right, but they were trying to put Curtis as a defund the police kind of guy, which I just thought was kind of interesting to throw out there.
That's because he made a comment.
Well, I mean, he wants to consolidate services on that, and he brings it under a guise of saving money.
But here, let me just comment on that for a minute.
Yeah.
So if I would have had the time to talk about that, and it didn't really come up. It came up like briefly, but it was never really discussed on either of those forums.
Yeah.
But if it would have, my response would be, when I became the mayor, we had hardly any police officers.
Oh,
we
yeah.
had 7.
Yeah.
We have budgeted for 20. We couldn't find. Nobody wanted to work for Moab City Police Department because of the Petito thing.
Mhm.
We were like all over the news as this horrible place.
Oh, and
So-
we had scandals before that. And,
Yeah. I mean, and then
the cops smoking weed with the kids and partying, kind of thing, right?
Well, I have a story about that. That's hilarious. But anyway, and the sheriff's office was kind of in a similar situation. Right after the pandemic, remember, it was a really hard time. And if the time was to consolidate, it was then. And that was my agenda.
Yeah.
I went in and I'm like, we have no chief. We have 7 cops out of 20. And, let's talk about consolidation.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't maintain these 2 law enforcement officers if none of them can find people to work. So we had a meeting in my office. Sheriff was there. We had no chief. The sheriff was there. All the police officers. I mean, my office was packed. 2 administrators, the city and the county, and myself, and the county attorney.
You wear your crown on that one. Right?
Yeah. That was like intimidating. There's I've never been in a room with that many guns.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I mean, and they
Not
were.
in San Francisco?
No,
You were hanging out with the Black Panthers.
Yeah,
Right?
no, in San Francisco, I was down in North Beach eating a lot of Italian food. But so that was we had the conversation. It's like, let's talk about this. The sheriffs, the deputies, and the police were like, no way, but it was like, you guys, we have to do something. We can't run our town with no officers.
Right.
We got to do something.
Yeah.
So
the dog catchers,
Yeah.
Left.
So, we went away thinking, let's look into this.
Mhm.
I mean, we, honest to God, went away, let's look into this. And the sheriff came back and he's like, I've kind of run the numbers and I've looked into it. And, and one of the things that we wanted as a city, if we were going to consolidate, we wanted there to be a Moab City focus in the sheriff's office. So that, we'll turn it over to the sheriffs, but there's got to be Moab City police, within that focuses on the city. And they said, no, if you guys, it's going to be the sheriff's office. You're going to have to change all your ordinances. So all of our laws would have to then be the same laws as the county, which I think our laws are a little bit more flexible. And then it was going to cost us about $5 million a year. So our budget is currently for 20 police officers. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. This is like a lot more complicated than just having a conversation and start making it happen.
Yeah.
You really have to look in, you have to do a study. You have to make sure that whatever we do isn't going to cost the taxpayers more money than it already does. So there's, and you have to look at that. You can't just say this is what we're doing because this is great. You really have to pay attention and study.
It's probably
it.
as complicated as a change of government.
Exactly. Exactly. And so,
which
is,
but
I don't think that's
just
off
because
the
it's
table.
complicated
Doesn't mean that we shouldn't think about it. It doesn't mean
well,
that we should look at it.
Let me ask you this, because I think about this, one of the police debates like this. In one system, you have somebody that's accountable to voters, and then in another system, you have somebody that's accountable to an executive that's mediated by a legislative branch. And so I can kind of see the pluses and minuses on either one. Like with a mayor over, I don't know how it works. I mean, how much are like, Mr. Bell, we're going to go after jaywalkers this week. Is it, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely have that.
Yeah.
I mean, but we don't. Because I don't micromanage our chief.
But you must have some influence on him.
I do. My police department loves me. And they really want me to stick around.
It's funny. I ended up talking to Chief Bell and the secretary, and I gotta say they had very positive things to say about your administration and whatnot. And Bell was getting into that nitty gritty of like the legality of having a county run police department. And I gotta be honest, I kind of like forgot all the little parts, but it was like a sheriff department has these different tasks than a municipality department. But I also am like, just because something's complicated doesn't mean it's not worth doing, right?
And that's right. And that's why I say with the consolidation, it's like, I am all for it. Let's look into it, but let's make sure we look into it and make the best decision for the community.
So you feel like you looked into it and like the money saving wasn't there?
No, I feel like we had the conversation, but we need to look at it deeper. Okay. We need to hire somebody, do a feasibility study. Yeah. Maybe the city and the county share on that together. The problem is who's going to take the lead. Yeah. It's not going to be me, right? Because I got other fish to fry, and I'm happy with our police department. Yeah. And but if somebody on the county, if Jameson wants to do it, the sheriff,
you feel like there's actually kind of no need. Before there was like a pressing need.
When we did it 4 years ago, when I it was like but now we've got a great chief. Our and I don't know what's happened at the sheriff's office. I have a great relationship with Jameson. I went down the river with one of the things I did. This is pretty funny. I mean, it was great. It was a great idea of mine. But I used to work for the parks. I was a director of the Friends of Orchards and Canyonlands. Mm-hmm. So we used to go down Cataract every year, and I would take my volunteers down, and some of my staff. Well, I only had one staff, but we would, all the people that did all the work for the parks. The park would take us down Cataract Canyon. Yeah. So once I stopped that job and I became the mayor, I said, this is a great time for our law enforcement to get together, and work together. We got a new sheriff coming online. We've got a new chief of police. We've got a new chief out at the Park Service. We got, BLM rangers. It's like, why don't we have a river trip, a 3-day river trip with all our law enforcement heads and me, the mayor, because I have to go on the trip.
It's a good time to rob a bank. Good time to rob the bank.
And so we did that for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. The sheriff, the chief, another police officer, Scott Phillinson, who's our sergeant, and me. And we got to go down the river with the cops. Yeah. And it was a way to build relationships, and it was fantastic. Yeah. And so I still have, and because of that, I feel like, Sheriff Wiggins can come and talk to me anytime he wants, and I could go and talk to him. Right. So, and I'm not, I hear, well, the mayor won't even come and talk to us. It's like, that's bullshit. You know where I'm at. You know where my phone number. Yeah. You're a busy man. You're the sheriff. Right. And I don't even know if that's true, because I believe the sheriff knows that my door's open, and if he wanted to come and talk to me, he can. Right.
So you have a good relationship.
But he also happens.
What do you think about?
What happens to be Colin Fryer's?
Is he
stepson?
Yeah. He's more local than me, right?
Yeah.
So what do you feel about that thing about what I was saying about the oversight? Because
of the police department?
Well, just kind of the theory about like having an elected sheriff, or do you have a chief that's overseen by a legislative executive.
100% a chief that's seen over.
Why is that?
Because when you have an elected sheriff, they're usually not as qualified. You know, it's kind of like, honestly, all the elected officials in the county. I mean, and I'm not saying that they're not qualified, but a lot of them come in new.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a thing on the council agenda, the commission agenda with Gabe. He doesn't want to be the auditor anymore. He wants to just be the clerk. And so I think he's going to be asking to change his role a little bit. Because, you know, we get these elected people, they come in there, and then they have to learn the job because nobody knows what that job is. And it's the same with the sheriff. You know, unless he's been a seasoned, you know, deputy, and they understand how it works, you know, you have to learn. And I think that's what the sheriff is going through now. He's learning a lot. You know, I think he's a great person. But I got to hire. I didn't. You know, I was a part of the process. It wasn't my hire. But I got to be a part of the process and interviewed these quality police officers to be our chief. And the guy we hired is now on the governor's task force. He oversees corrections, all the prisons up, you know, in the whole state of Utah.
Yeah.
You know.
So you feel like that oversight was more informed than election can be. That's basically what you're saying.
100%.
Yeah, you know,
100%.
one of the things.
And I do meet. I mean, just so you know, I meet with the chief once a month.
Yeah.
You know, so I have meetings with my city manager. Every Monday I have a meeting with the admin staff, which is the communications director, the HR director, and the city manager. And then we just kind of talk about the day. And then every Thursday I meet just with the city manager. The admin meeting is like, what's happening this week? What's going on? What do I need to know? What are you guys doing? What's happening in the human resources? You know, blah, blah, blah. Then I meet with the city manager. And in 1 month, at one meeting a month, the chief comes in and talks to me. What's going on? Do we, you know, hearing anything about Homeland Security and ICE? You know, anything I need to know? I'm hearing, you know, what about pulling trucks over that are running red lights? I'm hearing that all the time. Help me out with that, you know. And so I have those conversations with the chief once a month. And so you're right. I mean, and he wants to meet with me. He wants to talk to me. He wants to tell me what's going on so we can share it. And, you know.
Yeah, I just think that's, because the dynamic is different between those two things. It's another layer of accountability, and as much a pro-democracy I am, I sometimes think in some situations less democracy is better. You know, it's controversial, but so, you know, one of the things I've heard from Sheriff Jameson, I went to the Republican convention and he mentioned that he was a constitutional sheriff, which concerned me that was a dog whistle.
Was this before he was elected, or
no? This was like this year.
Last year.
Was it last year? Okay, it was at the Grand Center. And statements like that really concern me because it's like, is that a Proud Boys thing? Is that a 3% Oath Keeper? Is that a Nick Fuentes thing? I mean, is that your Constitution? You know, like I read that as a right-wing dog whistle. Now, I've been told I don't need to worry about it. And then there's the other argument is well, you just need to vote for a more liberal sheriff. And I'm not a liberal. But I'm
scared of the sheriff.
But no. So what I thought was interesting, I was like, yeah, but that profession is highly conservative and right wing, and that's kind of my concern with it. Is like, and I don't think being conservative right wing. I mean, I'm like I said, everybody's a libertarian at the DMV, and I certainly have like some streaks in me that can be that way. It just was like, I don't know what that means. You know, like that in some right-wing circles, being a constitutional anything is like, I make the law here and that. And I thought it kind of scared me a little on that. I was like, I wanted just to be like, well, why did you, like, that's kind of a libertarian stance. And I was like, well, why did you want license plate readers north of arches? I kind of wanted to be like, well, if you're so into like personal freedoms, you know, you're behind this police state idea, right? So, but you know, I have complicated feelings about it. But I just did think that was interesting that's you know, that's part of the you know, the argument is how much oversight, because it's such a powerful institution. I mean,
Yeah,
if you're on the wrong side of the cops, it's hard, to get out of that. So I don't know where, I'm not going to take a stance on that because I think it's very complicated. And
it is complicated, but it's a conversation we've had, and I haven't had an opportunity to say that out in public because I hear all the time and we had it, and we're open to it. I doubt it's not going to happen while I'm the mayor. It's going to take a long time for something to happen, if it even proves to be feasible and affordable for our residents. Because we're not going to do something that's going to cost them more money.
Right, and I mean the whole thing to me, if you slap a price sticker, okay, it's $7,000 this way, or $7 million this way, and $5 million this way. Oh, sweet, I'm sold. Like $2 million at a Moab City level is a lot of money.
Yeah,
that's like a discretionary budget of huge,
it's huge.
important. But I also know it's very nuanced, and there's all these questions. So I guess what, kind of feeling like maybe. Do you have anything else you wanted to talk about, or you got a question for me on there?
Who are you gonna vote for, Aaron?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I have said that.
I don't want you to answer that question.
No. I want to become, like I said, I feel that I'm a lot aligned with Miles is my business partner. And we kind of represent the younger Moab vote coming up, and we just wanted to expose you and Curtis to kind of our block. Because I feel like it's the up and coming thing.
Yep.
I mean, one of my criticisms of the Democratic Party is every time I go to it, I'm one of the, maybe the fifth youngest person. Like Emily Campbell's 2 kids, Emily, Oscar, and then it's me coming in at 44, right? That's a problem. The Republicans, I think the last thing was I was the second oldest person, and I was or youngest person, not the oldest, other than Oscar. Oh, Oscar and Miles, I was number 3. So I just see Moab, older people are running things, but you guys have run things for a while. Like you've been engaged in politics a long time, and so there's.
You guys, you're so mean to Joette.
the boomers. No, that generation. I mean, you guys. I mean, I don't disparage boomers. You lived in such a transparent or a transformational generation where you've seen, we're talking about women's rights to
Yeah, civil rights. I was around for this when I was real young.
Yeah.
But I remember that.
Yeah. So we want to expose people to hey, this is. Because, Oscar's going to be putting this on his social media accounts, more than just Boomer Book. And
it doesn't have much reach. I would keep it clear.
Yeah, but, that's kind of the idea. And we would like, representation and we just want engagement. So that's kind of I think, Miles has told me I will work with either one. That's what he's kind of like. But, because it is a coalition. And so, I don't want to, sway it. I don't know. It's just kind of I'm involved with the comment.
Miles's comment is a right one.
Yeah.
Because, and that's what I did when, the last city election when we changed city council members, that's what I told the candidates. It's I'm going to be, in public. I'm going to work with it. I can't come out and support with it. I knew who I was going to vote for.
Yeah.
And I told those folks who I was going to vote for. I said, I'm voting for you, but I'm not going to say anything publicly because whoever wins, I'm going to have to work with.
Yeah.
In my situation, I know that's what Miles is saying.
And Miles doesn't want to be I'm ostracized. I can't speak for Miles at all. I have felt, I guess I'll put this feedback. I have felt from the Democratic Party to kind of follow this certain thing or it's establishment Democrat thing, and I'm just kind of I've seen a lot of need for reform in the Democrat side because that's kind of more my home base, and being on planning and zoning, I've been it's surprised me how much I've more aligned with conservative things.
Me too. I'm
because
the same way.
I'm the conservatives, I don't mean to disparage the Republicans, they want the money because they're developers and they want to make a deal. And we need housing, and there's a lot of I gotta say, California, transplant Democrats that are like, well, I'm retired here and I don't want anything built within 5 miles of my place.
And I'm not a Democrat. I've never been a Democrat. I've always been independent. I vote for Republicans. I vote for Democrats. When I ran the first time, I'm like, I don't know that I want them to endorse me.
Okay. Interesting.
Because,
okay.
I mean, and they did. And the same this time. It's like, I don't know. I mean, this is a nonpartisan race.
Yeah.
I don't want either party to endorse either one of us. And whatever happens. But I am a true moderate. I'm a true, and Lynn Jackson knows that. I saw Lynn Jackson at the Raptor State Park thing with the governor, and I went up to him, and it was before Curtis, I think, had put his name in, and I just said, you know me, Lynn, you know how moderate I am. There's a lot of things that you say that I agree with.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say any of them now because they wouldn't be popular.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of things that I see that I agree with that the right is putting out there. And the same with the left. I'm definitely not MAGA. I'm definitely not Trump. But I am very middle of the road. 100%.
Yeah.
And people that know me know that that's true. My husband he's way left, and it drives him crazy. He'll say, every once in a while, he'll go, God, I woke up this morning and I found out I was married to a Republican. Just because of the things I say, because I see...
He's part of that dirty leftist pickleball.
I know. But I absolutely 100%, I see both sides, and, I will make a decision.
Well, in local politics, too, it's like, it's not the national scene. Right,
no,
it's just
it's not.
It shouldn't
be.
Yeah,
Jason Taylor and I, perfect example. He's a Republican, registered Republican, and he and I we agree almost on everything.
You mean tax raising Jason?
Yes.
That Jason?
Yeah, that guy. Anyway, I don't know. I feel, and it's the same with my opponent.
I kind of want to ask you, where do you think the political lines between Republicans and Democrats in Grand County and the city kind of lie? I've been trying to figure that out.
In terms of percentages?
Well, no, like I said, with land use, planning, and zoning, I can tell you, the young, progressive branch lines up more with,
the Republicans?
The Republicans, if we can call it that.
That's interesting.
But, I see, like I said, we kind of try to divide us Moabites up, as 30% climbers, Republican. Where do you see... I would say non-motorized recreationalists would probably tend to vote more Democrat. I don't know. I mean, let's see.
We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, which I think is kind of interesting. It's like the really far left, where the ones don't. We want to go back in time. We want things to be
MAGA.
like they were.
Yeah. Blue MAGA.
Yeah, we want. And I just find it so interesting now. My opponent, when he talks, it's like, we want to go back to the way old Moab used to be. And I'm like, holy crap, this is what the Dems were saying, all the progressives were saying 5 years ago, and now the Republicans are saying they want to go back to old Moab. They want it, but what they're really saying is, we don't want to have to follow anybody's rules. We want it to be back to the old handshake days. And here's the reality, Aaron. Yeah. Moab is a small town with big city issues, and we have to deal with them. Yep. We have 3 million people coming into our community every year. We're not a town of 5,000. Yeah. We're a town of 30 to 50. Yep. And we have to run it that way. Yep. And so there you have it.
Okay.
Handshake.
Oh yeah.
All right. Nice talking to you, Aaron. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
I'll be on it another time for other topics.
Well, you know what? I got Lynn Jackson to agree to come on.
Oh, stop.